Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is tutorial 209. So in our last tutorial we went along and finished setting up our PC class. And let's go ahead and open up Unity. Because of the way we have our new character prefab set up, I have to adjust something in my character customization scene, and that's this little platform here. I've gone ahead and added just a simple box collider to it. It really doesn't matter exactly how you have it shaped and everything else. It doesn't have to fit perfectly, as it's just something for our character to stand on, since he does have a character controller now. So when you start him up, he stands on it. And of course, if you do not have a box collider, I have no way to disable it. But anyway, if you do not have a box collider, it's just going to fall right through. So I'm going to go ahead and hook up the rest of my GUI here. So far I have the hair color. And I've got a couple other ones done. I'm still not completely done, but I've got a few more, so I'm going to hook those up. And let's start working on loading up our character data. Now there is actually one thing I've noticed that we should fix as well, and that's our character when we spawn him. If we take a look, because we have the character controller on him now, we can actually move him around. I don't want that. I don't want to be bothered making another prefab for him right now. So what I'm going to do is come into our player model customization script. And I guess right here before we grab its transform and set its transform, what I'm going to do is just call destroy. And what I want to destroy is our player input script so that it doesn't take player input and move the character around. So we'll just say character mesh dot get component. The component we want is player input, and that should do it. I guess a better way to do that would actually be to add a function to player input that we could enable and disable. Let me just take a quick look here. Let me just come down a bit. See the muscular one. This is something you can work on later on. We will be adding a little bit later on, but right now we're not going to be worried about that. We could have it grab, well, in the update here. Let me see. Yeah, in the update, we could put this all in one block. Well, not even. Basically, we could add a toggle to say, you know, hey, disable this input script and enable it, because we're going to want that a little bit later on anyway when we have some sort of chat system when we move on to multiplayer. So when the person is typing into chat, the character's not, you know, jumping all over the screen and moving around. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So I'm going to just save that off. I'm going to go back into Unity. I'm going to start it back up. And moving my movement keys, and he's not moving. Great. I've re-enabled my scaling. Let me just shrink some of this over, this down. There we go. All right, so I've enabled a few more things. Well, I have 3 things enabled already. Well, I guess 4 if you count the hair color. So we have hair, we have skin color, we have scale, and that should be enough of a demonstration for you to be able to load all of your customization assets up. As like I said before, you're probably going to have a different set than me. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to load them. So I've switched over to my tutorial scene, and of course when we start the game up, we'll notice that it creates a character for us here, and we can move around. It does all the looting and everything else for us. Everything seems to be working fine. And we can open up our character and inventory panel, equip stuff, and sure enough, you know, it changes everything. But the first thing I want to do is change the way it's loading up our character, because if we actually go to our PC script and we take a look here, let me see. Right here is where we're actually creating our character model in game. And if you notice, we're just throwing in this static string. And we actually want to change this to instantiate the right character model that we have. For me, for instance, I have the fat model and I have the muscular model. So I'm going to change this line a bit. It's actually really easy to change. We've actually have this already in here. When we instantiate our character, the line we're using is actually right here. And since I only have guys, it's fine. If I did have females, I would have to do a check before instantiating. So if I'm grabbing the males, if I'm playing a male character, make sure I instantiate from the male character line or models. And of course, if I'm instantiating a female, make sure I'm doing the female models. Now, we're going to have a trouble here because the male model path is a constant that we have saved over in our player model customization script. And there's a few ways we can fix this. Ideally, I'd move these over to game settings. See, we've already started creating resource paths. And I am going to, well, let's just do it. It'll take a little bit more editing in this video, but that's fine. I'm going to be moving them eventually anyway. I am going to put a space there just so I know grouping, how I'm breaking up my groupings. And that's going to create some errors over here because it's going to be referencing those constants and they don't exist anymore. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and keep working on my PC script. And now I can reference these. So let's make them public. Pretty much everything in here I think is going to be public. Okay, we got that done. Let's head back over here. And we'll have to tell it that this constant exists in game settings too. Whoops, I hit an extra key. And we're going to grab male model path. Now this male models array is also in our player customization script. And it's right here. Now we've got it set to be public because we're actually setting this in the inspector. And that worked fine then. I don't really like using the inspector a lot. It is a very great tool and I don't want to discourage using it, but for my workflow personally, I tend to script everything and not use the inspector a whole lot. Simply because I always forget to go back and change values in the inspector. For me, I just remember to change the code more often than the actual inspector values. So I'm going to actually move this as well. We're going to put it in game settings too. And I'm just going to stick it down here. I'll leave it public. And I'm actually going to initialize it here. And I'm just going to put my character model names in here. So these are strings. And I believe the first one was fat and the second was muscular. And of course, if you have more, just keep adding them. I could move the female as well. And if you are having female character models, by all means, make sure you go ahead and do that. I do not have any female character models. I was just using cubes. But if you are, go ahead and move them. I'm going to leave the rotation speed here. We'll leave all that. I know I am going to get errors, but let's, whoops, I almost closed it. Let's go back here and take a look. This should now be accessible again by doing game settings too. Dot and male. It's not showing up. Let me see here. Let me just go back and take a look here. Helps from in game settings too. Public string male models. And we should make this static so I can access it. So game settings 2 dot, then we have our male models. And in order to get this index, this is where we're actually going to be using our load character model out of game settings. So let me see, I've got mine down here. Let me see, right here. I have a save character model index and a load character model index. And if you notice, a lot of these savings are all the same. There's like one line, we're saving an int. It takes some sort of string, which we have defined up top as constants, and of course the index. If you want to work ahead and you feel a little ambitious, you can go ahead and actually combine a lot of these together. I'd do it by making these public and you can actually just reference these and pass them in and make just one function for saving a lot of this stuff. But we'll cover stuff like that a little bit later on if you don't feel like doing it. But let's take a look at my load character model index and my save character model index. It's the exact same as all the rest of the save ints. I'm calling playerpref.setInt, and then I'm just grabbing character model index, which is the constant I defined up top for the name of that key, and of course the index. And the same thing for the loading. I'm just going to return whatever it is there, and by default, if there is nothing saved there, it returns a 1, which of course if we look up here, let me shrink this down again. Right here, we'll be loading this one here by default. So that's my muscular character. So we'll just go down here and I'll just show quickly. This is how I saved it. I just simply called the method, pass the index in. But this should all be old school for you. And we'll come in. So we're going to replace this index with game settings2 dot load character model index, and I'm going to go down to a new line just so it doesn't wrap. Let's just go like this. Actually, oh, low battery on my mouse. I'm just going to move this up a little bit. Whoops, we want that. I just find it a little easier to read this way. So here's what we're going to instantiate, and it's still a little long, so I'm going to bring it back a bit. I just like to be able to see it all at once. Now next we're going to want to have some sort of transform position, and then after that I'm going to want some sort of rotation. Now transform position, this is another thing that we're going to actually have loading up for my character. So when our character actually saves in game, we'll want to save his position in game, so the next time he loads up, he can actually load his character at the exact same spot that he saved at. Right now I do not have that functionality put in, so we're just going to hard cast this for now. Let me see, actually instead of hard casting it, let's go ahead and create the function for it, and we'll actually we'll set the default value that we want for our game hard cast in here. So public static, let me see, we're going to have load position. And to be honest, I'm actually going to put these up top because we can just cut and paste a couple of these. So yeah, I'll just shrink these down. And I'm just going to cut and paste these because, like I said, they're almost exactly. The only difference is the character's position. So this would be save character position. And I'll have to change the constant I'm referencing. Load character position. And let's go make some constants. I'm just going to take one, copy and paste it, and just say character position. And then that key I'm just going to call, I'm actually going to call it player position. Now before you go ahead and start actually using it, make sure you get a name that you actually like, but it's not too bad in modern development. You do have the refactor and in Visual Studio as well, since this is the player and not some generic asset. Alright, so I'm just going to cut and paste that down, and it's down here. A quick change of name here because I want to say player, and we can just replace that constant. And we'll replace this constant. Now right here, here's where it's going to get a little tricky. Well, not so much tricky, but you have to think about how your character's position in game is kept. And it's kept as a vector 3. Unfortunately, we cannot save vector 3s directly into our player prefs. So what we can do is actually create 3 different keys. One for our X, one for our Y, and one for our Z. So I'm going to go back down. So I accidentally hit my mouse. And in here where I'm taking in a int, I'm going to switch this to a vector3. And I'm just going to call it pos. And this is now actually going to be 3 lines. And I'm just simply going to concat onto the end an x, a y, and a z. Now, if you actually want to look into the string format class, it is a little bit more efficient, but for quickly prototyping stuff out, I just tend to use the concatenation. Okay, so we're going to want to take pos.x, pos.y, pos.z, and when we're returning down here, we're not going to be returning an int anymore. We're going to be returning a vector 3, not a 4, a 3. I've never used a vector 4. I haven't even looked at it, so I'm not exactly sure what that fourth vector or fourth variable is for, but something to look into. And what we're going to want to return is, well, we're going to have to create a new, vector 3, I'm just going to call it temp, is equal to, well, let's just keep it empty. And we'll just say, well, let's just put the command in here to load all of them up. So new vector 3. And what we're going to want to do is load up x, y, and z and put them in. So we can just grab this. And it's going to be get int. We want to concatenate onto it our x. And I'm just going to cut and paste this for y and z. And then we'll just simply return. Well, I guess technically we could just return the new vector instead of actually creating a variable to store it in. But for now, we already have it typed out, so let's just leave that. And I have an error here, and it's because I need a comma and a comma. Not quite. 1 comma there. 1 comma here. There we go. We're getting our x, y, and z. Now for the default values, you can hard cast them in here, but well, since we've been going along with all these constants up here, I'm going to create another one. And this is going to be the spot I want the character to spawn in-game if there's no spawn point saved, or I should say no position for the character. So basically this is where the character starts when the game first loads up. And it can also be used as a default if for some reason there is no value to load up. We know this is where he's going to be. So I'll make this public. We'll make it a constant. I've never actually tried a constant vector 3. And I'm going to call it starting position. And it's going to be equal to a new vector 3. And you want to figure out where this is. Now, for me, I'm just going to go in game. I'm going to pick one of the positions of my chest. So I'm going to grab this one here. So 522 on the X. You want to go a little bit higher on the Y so he doesn't fall through the ground. So I'm going to say 56. And then on the Z, let me see, global position. Even though my chest is facing this way and this little blue arrow is pointing this way, if you switched over to use the global coordinates, you'll notice that Z is pointing this way, and you can also get the idea of which way in your game world you're facing by looking at your little axes up here. So I know I want to move them back a little bit this way. So I'm going to go 1 less on the Z. So I have 1115, I'll do 1114. And we'll see where that puts them. Now, I haven't actually created my starter town, at least I haven't finished it. And once I actually have my starter town built up, obviously I'll probably want them to spawn either in my town or at least close to it. Okay, that's done. So now I'm going to come back into my PC script, and this position that we're going to be spawning in. It's going to be game settings 2 dot load. I called it player position. Load player position. And for his rotation, I'm just going to set that to the default of quaternion identity. And that should be it to actually have our player model load up properly. Now, like I said, I am going to have some errors here, so let's go ahead and fix those while I'm in here. And the type cannot be declared constant. Bummer. I was hoping you could. Can I do it as a static? And which means I'll want to refactor this. We'll just call it, it is public, so starting position. I'm just going to call it starting pos. And we'll hit OK, and I'll go through and change everything. And here we go. This should be our character model customization errors. And it looks like we have 14. So let's just go ahead and look at the first one. We'll just go down the line. The name male models does not exist. Well, that's because we moved it. This is now present in game settings 2 dot male models. Female models I left in, but if you move drawers, make sure you update that as well. I might move mine a little later on. To be honest, I'm probably just going to end up commenting out in my script, at least until I actually get a hold of some game models or I sit down and decide to make a few. But that's one done. We're down to 13. The next one, the name male model path does not exist. Well, we moved that too. So this is now game settings 2. And let me see, is there anything else here? We'll have to change this too. Actually, is it game settings 2 or game setting 2? We'll soon find out. Game setting 2. It's one of the reasons why I always go one space before it and type it out. Yeah, game setting 2. IntelliSense is good. Alright, so the next one is the name female model path does not exist in the current context. I move that too. I'm just going to cut and paste this. And of course, you'll want to make the adjustment here if you moved your array. See, next is the name head texture path moved, and yes, it did. Now I want to go back in and make sure that this script is still working in the scene. And load character model index. Let me see. To non-delegate type int. So we'll take a look here. Game object. What was the error again? I cannot convert method group. Okay, so I did something wrong. Let me just quickly take a look at it. And it's right here. I don't see anything wrong with it off the top of my head. And actually it's in the first line. It's not in the position. So we're grabbing the male model path. And this load character index, we'll need those on there. We do not have accessors for it. So we have a few more, another 6. The best overloaded match for the best overloaded method match for Unity engine, blah blah blah. Playerprefs.setInt is string int has some, okay, well. Oh, these are actually floats. These values. So instead of being set ints, they're going to have to be a float. These errors come up all the time. And that means when we're loading them up, we'll want to load them as floats as well. And wow, looks like everything's gone. So let's start it up. And he starts off at 0, 0, 0. So we'll stop that. And I'm just going to try it one more time. Okay, I'm going to throw a debug log statement in. Actually, let's go ahead and debug this in the next video. This one's already almost 25 minutes, so I'm going to call this one done. I'll start encoding it, and it looks like I should change my battery in my mouse. I've got a little bit of time. Anyway, I'll just end this video here, and I'll start up the next one, and we can debug what's going on in our script that isn't working right. Anyway, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.